a guiding pathway and a food source for Indigenous peoples, water power for the mills of early European settlers, a shipping route for the first and second Welland Canals. The waters of 12 Mile Creek have sustained communities for thousands of years. I am sitting on the eastern bank of 12 Mile Creek in downtown St. Catharines, Ontario, to bring you History from Here, a video series presented by the St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canal Centre. It is thought that Niagara's earliest inhabitants lived in the area surrounding the upper 12 Mile Creek watershed and short hills some 9,500 to 2,900 years ago. Indigenous peoples were likely drawn here for the deer and moose that once roamed, the bountiful fruits and nuts that grew, as well as its ample fishing resources. By the 1600s, a string of Indigenous longhouse villages developed along the crest of the Niagara Escarpment and the many waterways flowing into Lake Ontario, including 12 Mile Creek. The Indigenous peoples who settled in Niagara also established an extensive trail network following waterways to connect to Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, the Niagara River, and beyond into the Great Lakes. Though these communities eventually dwindled and migrated elsewhere, their trails remained and became the steadfast routes of travel in Niagara for the European settlers who came after, and are still in use today. Martindale Road, St. Paul Street, and Queenston Street, among others, were all once part of this complex Indigenous system of well-traveled routes. In the 1780s and 1790s, United Empire Loyalists and retiring veterans of the Butler's Rangers migrating from the United States began to settle around the height of land where Dix Creek and 12 Mile Creek met. After the first Treaty 3 was signed between the British Crown and some Mississauga peoples in 1783, purchasing the land between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, the Niagara Peninsula was formally surveyed and opened for development. Settlers were drawn to this location thanks to the existing confluence of the many trails crisscrossing Niagara, the fertile lands that surrounded the waterways, as well as for the potential of the creek to provide water power for mills. Settlers to the area first built a storehouse as a supply and trading point about where the Burgoyne Bridge is today, followed by mills, then a church, a tavern, a school, and eventually shops and stores. By the early 1800s, the junction of Ontario Street and St. Paul, above the flowing waters of the creek, had become a hub of activity, trade, and commerce for Niagara. When, in 1829, the first Welland Canal began operation, the shipping route used the waters and route of 12 Mile Creek, which opened into Martindale Pond, to connect Lake Ontario to the upper Great Lakes. The creek that attracted St. Catharines' earliest settlers now fueled the development of the village into an industrial center of significant importance, now not only vital for its water power, but for its transportation access as well. With 12 Mile Creek running through the core of the city, the industries and people of St. Catharines have enjoyed many decades of prosperity. Even after the construction of the third Welland Canal in the 1880s redirected the shipping route away from the downtown, the creek continued to power the factories here. 12 Mile Creek continues to sustain our community today. The waterway was straightened and deepened in the 1940s to increase the capacity of the power generating facilities at Tequila Falls, and its rushing waters continue to provide us with electricity today. You can follow much of 12 Mile Creek's winding path today along a series of scenic recreational trails. These trails are reminiscent of Niagara's Indigenous history, which, despite the challenges presented by the arrival of European settlers, endures in the varied geography of our city.